Welcome to Journaling with Nature, the podcast for those who want to turn curiosity into wonder, a pencil sketch into a rabbit hole of discovery, a moment of stillness into a life full of joy. I'm your host, Bethan Burton. Let's open the pages of our nature journals and explore this world together. Hello, this is episode 86. It's such a special honour and joy to share today's episode with you. My guest is a close friend of mine, another internet friend from across the seas who I've never met in person, but someone I've shared a lot with and that I feel very close to. Corina Brdar is a Canadian ecologist and nature journaler and one of the small team of organisers for International Nature Journaling Week. She's also a long-term supporter of this podcast, and I'm so grateful to her for that. Concern for conservation has always been a part of Corina's life. She made ecology her career, and now through nature journaling, she's deepening this nature connection even more. Our conversation touches on a really wide range of subjects, from mindfulness, nature journaling in the garden, to why Corina's journal pages are becoming messier as time goes by. Let's listen. Thank you so much for being here with me. I am really looking forward to the podcast chat together.
I am too. I'm so glad you invited me, and I think you already know this, but your podcast has been so inspiring to me, and the conversations you've had have really helped my nature journaling, and I'm really hoping that today some of the things we talk about inspire someone in your audience. So I'm excited.
Oh, beautiful. Well, yes, and you know, as a podcast listener, where I start all my podcast, which is to chat about early nature experiences. And I wonder if nature has been part of your life from the beginning.
Yeah, I always really enjoy this part of the conversation, and for me, it has been not in any really big or dynamic way. I grew up early in life. It was in a smaller city in southwestern Ontario, which is one of the more diverse parts of Canada. I didn't know that at the time. And we just did little nature outings on the weekends. My dad grew up in a more wild part of the province, so he was used to spending a lot of time outdoors. So he would take my mom and I on little adventures. And the other thing that was a really big part of my childhood at that time was going to the library and
Mhm.
finding nature books. And I also had a subscription to a nature magazine for children called Owl. There's one called Owl and one called Chickadee. And I just looked it up. It's been around for 46 years.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So I was right at the beginning. And it was such a great magazine for inspiring kids to learn about nature. So that was actually a big part of my nature experience as a kid. And then when I was 9, we moved to Northern Ontario, which is where my dad was from. And when people think of Canada, it's what you picture. It's like all the rocks and trees and lakes and stuff. And so that's what we did. We spent time outside, just hikes and canoeing and that kind of thing. So yeah, that was my childhood, doing things outdoors that way.
So you had these experiences in childhood and now you're a professional ecologist. And I wonder, was that a natural choice, an obvious choice for you out of school?
Yeah, I've been thinking about how I ended up here, and I think it started from childhood. I have pencil crayons that I've had since I was a little girl, and there's a sticker on them of a black-footed ferret because I had this sticker set of endangered species. And so I've always been interested in, well, at that time it was wildlife. And then in high school, I would do like English projects on endangered species. And that interest was always there. And in high school science class, I remember doing a project on beluga whales. They're small whales that live in the Arctic, but they also live in the St. Lawrence River of Canada, which is the river that
Wow.
flows by Montreal. It connects the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean. And at that time in the 80s, they were considered toxic waste when they died because it was so polluted there. And I did this science project on it, and it really affected me. And so when I went to university, I wanted to
Mm.
work in conservation. And interestingly, in my job now, I work for the federal government, and I just learned that my organization is doing work with those whales to help with
Really?
acoustic pollution. So, yeah, it's kind of neat to hear about that. So, yeah, I think it's always been a concern for conservation has always been within me. And so when I went to university, I chose to do my degree in ecology, and then I ended up here, which I'm very lucky to have landed a job in this field. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me the story of how you found and came to nature journaling.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of funny because I've actually been nature journaling for years, really. When I look through old sketchbooks, I'm like, oh, that's actually a nature journal page, but I didn't know it was
Yes,
a practice at the time, like a lot of your guests.
yes.
Yeah, and then like in September of 2020, we were on vacation and I had my art kit with me. I always drag it around and wouldn't use it. And we were sitting at a beach in a very beautiful place. It's the Ile de Malin, which is in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And it wasn't very nice out, and the wind was blowing, and there were grasses flowing. I'm like, oh, those are so pretty. I'd love to draw them, but I don't know how. And I just left my art kit behind the seat. And so I was looking through Facebook and I saw an ad for the Wild Wonder Conference. And so I signed up for that. I'm like, what is that? And then that October, I participated in Wild Wonder and I was like, whoa, nature journaling, this is a thing. And I was so excited about it, and I, like, dove into it with both feet, and my partner was like, "You've been doing that for years. Like, this is not new."
Yes,
But it was yeah, it was just having all those teachers and seeing what people were doing. I realized, "Oh, this is a practice, and you can make it what you want it to be." So that was really
that's so
liberating.
interesting.
Yeah, it was liberating for sure. Yeah, one of my very, very first nature journaling practices that I didn't realize that's what I was doing was like way back in 2008, I guess. My partner and I went to the reserve in the mountains of Mexico where the monarch butterfly travels to spend the
Wow.
winter. Yeah, we were really lucky to go there. He actually had a connection with someone through his job who does monarch conservation in Mexico. And so we were able to travel there, and he also likes to draw, and so he suggested, let's bring a sketchbook and some pencils, and so we did, and so we were sitting in this incredible forest of conifer trees absolutely covered in monarchs, like you've seen the pictures in National
Yes.
Geographic, and that's what it looked like you can't even see the trunks or the branches or the needles. It's all butterflies. And we sat there, I don't know, an hour or more and just drew what we were seeing. And again, it was a really nice way to just be there and observe. I think if you just sit somewhere like that, like it's a wonderful thing to do. You sit there and enjoy it. But if you're engaged in observing and capturing, you're just even more absorbed in that moment.
And cementing it in your memory and in your heart as well.
Yes, you're so right because I haven't looked at the pictures we drew in years. I'm not sure where they are right now, but I can picture them and I can
Yes.
picture what it was like to be there more than we ever would if we just took photos there.
Yes,
Yeah.
that must have been completely awe-inspiring.
It was incredible. It was incredible. And where I live, the monarchs migrate here in the summer, and it's the like the fourth generation. So they've traveled from Mexico in February through the southern US, had babies, hatched,
Wow.
flew further. Yeah, so they get here around late May and early June. So the babies that arrive here, well, they're adults when they get here. They'll they'll lay eggs. Those individuals that um, emerge will fly all the way back to Mexico, having never been there. So to have that connection to be in that place, I'm so lucky. Yeah.
Yes, and having seen both sides of that migration process must be amazing. I can imagine that it feels really connected to have seen that on both sides.
Yeah, it is in the fall when we get to October, and if I see monarchs emerging, I'm like, you gotta get going. You have so far to go.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Come on, guys,
Hurry.
let's go. I love
Yeah,
that story.
yeah.
Well, tell me about your history with creativity because it sounds like you were already keeping sketchbooks, you were already mark making and all that sort of thing. What's been your connection with creativity down the years?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed drawing and coloring, and was always encouraged to do it by my family. And family members would give me art supplies, and my parents would pay for little art lessons, which was a treat because we didn't have a lot of money, but they could see that it was something I
Mm.
enjoyed. And in high school, I took lots of art classes throughout high school so that I learned more skills there. And I enjoyed it. I wasn't like excellent at it, but it was something I really liked. And then in university, in my first year, I took one elective course in arts. And of course, university art's a very different thing. And I didn't get a very good mark. And I wanted scholarships, so I thought, well, I'm never taking another art course because it affects my average. So then after that, I would just like as an adult, as a working adult, I took different kinds of workshops just for fun in different media. And one thing that I did as a treat for myself when I turned 40 was I had this dream of going to France. And so I went on a trip. It was a watercolor workshop trip in the south of France. So it was very dreamy and
Wow.
yeah, it was very special. And the teacher was actually, he's quite a renowned watercolor artist from the US. His name's Ian Stewart, and he's award winning. And so, he taught us how to build a sketchbook and a kit to carry with us. But he's also this incredible artist, so it was a little intimidating. So I think I had set my bar too high for myself because I learned, oh, carry a kit and portable watercolors. Um, but then I wasn't creating beautiful works of art when I pulled it out, so I would get discouraged.
Yeah, creativity and this whole thing about what is nature journaling, how are we making art or are we observing and noting down what we're seeing? Yeah, I'd love to hear you talk more about that. That sort of push-pull of recording experiences and making art and what that means for you and how you turn that critical voice down.
Yeah, it's a really important question, and I really like how all your guests and all the people you see sharing their work deal with it really differently.
Yes.
Yeah, for me, I need to consciously remind myself that this is not art at the same time that
Yeah.
I'm seeing these beautiful things that I'm inspired that, oh, I would love to capture that. And I actually, I told you I went skating on the ice this
Yes.
morning. Yeah. And I love wild ice forms these incredible, beautiful patterns that fascinate me. And I would love to build my watercolor skill set so that I could capture them.
Mm, mm,
But at the same time, right now, I'd rather focus my nature journaling time on just getting out there and doing it. And really early on, after I learned about nature journaling, after the Wild Wonder Conference, I listened to a talk by Marley Pfeiffer, who has a nature journal show, who you've had on your program. And it was such an inspiring talk he gave on nature journal mindset and about,
mm,
just doing it. And that's really his approach that he puts out there in a lot of his talks, and it really speaks to me. And I take notes when I listen to these things, and I refer back to my notes. What did Marley say? And I took notes during our conversation with Paula Peters in the summer, well, in the Canadian summer, and I was looking back at them, and she talks about how trying to create art can be a barrier. And
mm.
so that's why, like, I have an Instagram page, and I I don't really care what my pieces look like when I post them. And I know even some of the photos of the pieces are really blurry, but it's more about the process.
Yeah, yeah, and Instagram especially because it's so visual, because it's designed to be beautiful and capture people with beautiful, pictures, it can really change the way we journal or definitely change the things that we select to post, and so I love that you don't care about that and that your practice is just to do it, just the process, just keep going, keep going, keep going. I really like that. So you talked about skating, and I'd love for you to describe nature where you are, and especially because you have been experiencing some, um, wild, wintry camping lately. I'd love for you to talk about nature where you are, and especially nature journaling in winter.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. So I really got into the practice of nature journaling last winter. And so to me, it feels very natural. Yeah,
Mm,
so I live on the southern edge of Canada, really. So I live on the north shore of Lake Ontario, which is one of the Great Lakes, some of the largest freshwater lakes in the world. And sometimes we don't get a real winter, but this winter has been a real winter. It's been cold and snowy, and the water bodies around me have frozen. So it's a lot of fun where we live. We live in proximity to a lot of different types of water bodies, and also different types of forests where I can cross country ski. So that's been really nice. And my partner is also a biologist, and he's a very he likes to be out in nature and interact with nature in a lot of different ways. So I'm lucky that I get exposed to these things and get to join him. So yeah, we've been winter camping this winter in a tent with a stove in it. So some people say
oh,
that's
wow.
wimpy. Yeah. But it's a lot of fun. And I think of those as nature journaling trips. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's really neat. And again, early on when I started nature journaling, I was watching the Nature Journal show with Marley Pfeiffer a lot, and he interviewed Kim McNutt, who you've
Mhm.
also had on your podcast. And I had just started nature journaling when I saw her speaking about nature journaling in Alaska, and she talked
Mhm.
about how she did it. And I thought, well, if she can do it in Alaska, I can do it in Southern Ontario. So yeah, I actually I don't want to say I like nature journaling in winter better, but it's easier to focus on small things. I love nature journaling twigs. They're fascinating to me. I have deciduous trees and shrubs. because the buds are really interesting identification features. And the twigs have a lot of variability in them. And so in the winter, that's what you see is the twigs. And so you can really
Yeah,
focus on
interesting.
them. Yeah. Yeah. Nature journaling in winter is a lot of fun.
Your landscape, your experience of the changes through the year is just mind-blowing to me. I really cannot imagine going outside for a little bit of a skate. I love it. It's this wild wonderland in my mind.
It really can be. Yeah, I feel lucky that we have proper seasons here and the seasonal
Mm.
change, and I really appreciate that. And yeah, I've noticed that's something you're interested in with your guests.
Yeah.
It's really neat to see how it's different around the world. Yeah, it's a treat.
Tell me about your experience of nature journaling helping you fall in love with nature.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That I've obviously always had a love for nature. I've dedicated my entire education and career to it. And when I say that, what I mean is that it let me look at it again with new
Mm.
eyes because I've spent my whole adult life looking at nature often through the lens of work. So I'm out in these beautiful places for work, and I was very lucky, but I'm having to do my job. And so I'm having to learn, okay, what is this species? I'm having to quantify what I see. And it's not the same as just being able to be there on my own terms, looking at what I want to look at, interacting in it with it in a way that feels natural and having the nature journal with you, you're looking more closely, you're paying attention, you're seeing the little things that you wouldn't normally take the time to see. um, and it's really come clear to me where I live on a rural road. It's kind of a dirt road that gets a few cars an hour. And if I want to go for a walk in the morning, I walk down the road a few kilometers. And before I started nature journaling, it was an okay walk. Like it's not a spectacular, beautiful landscape. It's nice enough. But now when I bring my nature journal with me, it's fascinating. I'm excited to get out the door and see what am I going to see and what am I going to be able to record in my nature journal. So it shifts the relationship a lot.
Yeah, and you even mentioned that as an ecologist, nature journaling sort of feeds back and helps you be a better ecologist, and that makes so much sense.
Oh, yeah, it really has. And it's part of why I'm kind of putting myself out there with my nature journal is because I feel like if I had this practice when I was learning to be an ecologist and trying to learn all these species, I feel like I would have learned so much more because not only are you paying more attention, but it's such a great way to learn to identify things.
Yes.
Yeah, like my partner's been trying to teach me how to identify ducks. We get a lot of migratory ducks passing through because we're on this huge lake. And I don't know, like, oh, I can't learn this. But now I bring my nature journal. We're in the car driving, and I'm like, oh, stop, I want to draw these. And because you're paying attention to the ID features, it for me, it helps me remember better and learn and see little details and makes it fun too.
Yes. Yeah, something, uh, that has multi layers, often is really useful for learning, and with nature journaling, like you say, you're drawing, you're writing, you're engaged in a way that's not. I remember when I was at university, I had this mission. I was going to learn all the birds in my bird book, and I remember writing them down. Starting at the beginning and writing them down on a blackboard. It was so boring, and like I literally stopped after the first page. But, when you're seeing them, when you're with them, when you're drawing them, it's much more useful to do it that way.
Yeah, yeah, it's just yeah, it's more engaging. And you're right, it's the different layers because you can use okay, diagrams if you're a visual learner
Mhm.
and the writing and listening and especially with birds, I've seen people do this on the Nature Journal Club Facebook page and lots of places, but trying to draw what the bird sounds like to them.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's been
Yes.
interesting. I can't remember if I've already told you I'm volunteering for this community science project that's taking place in my province called the Breeding Bird Atlas. Um, have I told you about this before?
No, speak a little bit about that.
Okay, yeah, so breeding bird atlases take place across North America in every state and province, I think. I do believe they started in my province of Ontario. And what it is every 20 years, they recruit hundreds, thousands of volunteers to go out and survey squares. They divide the province up into squares and survey for all the breeding birds that they can find. And so that requires learning to identify birds by sounds. So you can hear
Mm.
the breeding males and know, okay, that's who I'm hearing. And you look for signs of breeding evidence too. And I've never been a good birder, but I got peer pressure to sign up for this through work. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll give this a try. And so I've been having to learn all the birds of my area, and nature journaling has been so helpful for that. Because it's fun drawing them and writing things about them and also, yeah, trying to draw, okay, what does it song sound like? It's a great tool for learning.
How fantastic. That sounds like an amazing program, and I love that, it's so long term. Every 20 years, the person who's, organized it last time is probably not organizing it this time. I love that investment over years and generations.
It is amazing. And actually, I do want to do this shout out to the organizer. It's actually been the same person leading it.
Oh,
This is
wow.
the third time it's taken place now in my province. So he first did it 40 years ago, 20 years ago, and
Wow.
now he's a team of people are organizing it, but he's involved, which is pretty
Oh, good
cool.
on him.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
amazing.
it's neat.
So, as well as being an ecologist, you're also a yoga teacher, and you also have a strong mindfulness practice. And I'd love for you to talk to me about that place where mindfulness and nature journaling overlap.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that really draws me to nature journaling is it is a practice that connects you with the present moment. And that's
Mm,
what mindfulness practices are, right? You're being present to what's happening right now, paying attention without judgment. And that's what I'm doing in nature journaling. What we all do, we're seeing what is here, and there is a temptation to seek out the most beautiful or exciting thing when you're nature journaling. But what I love and what I see other people doing is they're drawing whatever, I love
yes.
drawing twigs. It's not the most exciting thing. And that part's really, really cool. And for me, we've all had a tough couple years, these past few years. And
Yeah.
yeah, I've used different mindfulness practices, my yoga posture practice and meditation, and I'm finding I I haven't been doing my meditation practice because I'm spending that time nature journaling instead, and it's okay.
Mm,
Like I haven't lost my mind. The nature journaling practice um, fits that purpose for me.
mm-mm. So you have a website called Living Being Mindfulness, and you also have the same name for your Instagram. And I'm wondering about that. Um, well, I guess I'm wondering you've started sharing online and in person, and I'm wondering about sharing this practice with others and this feeling and desire in you to help others come to this practice.
Yeah, it's something I've thought about a lot, and you and I have had some really helpful correspondence on that, which I really appreciate. And when I first really started developing this practice last year, it spoke to me. I felt like I've been not searching for something, but it when I found this community and this practice is like, yes, this is something I've
Mm.
needed in my life, and it made sense. Like I've taken art workshops. I know a bunch of nature stuff because that's my job. I've done all this yoga and mindfulness training, and it brought it all together for me. And I was reading this really cool book by a yoga teacher named Stephen Cope, who works at the Kripalu Center in Massachusetts, USA. And his book was called The Great Work of Your Life, and it's about finding your vocation in life. And
Mm.
it's an interpretation of an ancient yogic text called the Bhagavad Gita, which is about um, your purpose in life. And I was reading that book, and it just made sense. For me, this is something I am meant to do in life, is to enjoy nature journaling, and I want to share it with others because the same as I found out about it and it's made such a difference in my life, I'm hoping that by sharing it with others, it will spark something in someone else. And there are so many excellent nature journal teachers and resources out there. And I believe that hearing things different ways from different people, it reaches the most people. Because I realized after the Wild Wonder Conference, I had actually come across the concept of nature journaling. Prior to that, I had read articles on it, and it didn't really spark anything in me. But some of the things that I encountered after Wild Wonder, that's what did it. And so I specifically want to reach out to some specific communities within my province. Gardeners are one group of people that I think could not only benefit from nature journaling. I just think there's an untapped potential there, and my hope is that if I inspire gardeners to nature journal, then they will also build their love and curiosity for nature. Because I've seen, I am quite an avid gardener, and I've been involved in online gardening forums, and I've noticed over the past few years, people are more interested in the nature they see in their gardens. They're not just growing flowers and vegetables. They want to know,
Mm.
what's this mushroom, what's this bug, and I think if they bring nature journaling into their garden, it'll just expand that even more for them.
Yeah, 100%. I think gardening and nature journaling go perfectly together, and it's an area that I'm really interested in too. And a lot of gardeners naturally keep a garden journal. This is what, with dates and times and where they planted something in the garden. And so expanding that into nature journaling is just very, very natural, I feel. I wonder how you use your nature journal in your garden.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I've already started for this year. I've used it different ways. I'm not trying to be too structured about it. I think you could be, and it would be a great tool that way if you wanted it to be. For me, I like to just sit and be in my garden. It's like my safe place where I just feel at ease and reset my mind. And so bringing my nature journal there just enhances that experience. But at the same time, I am using it a little bit as a learning tool. If I see a new sign of disease or insect on a plant,
Mm.
I've nature journaled that a couple times. Like, what is this? And as you know, nature journaling, asking questions in your nature journal, it's a really good practice. And so I've made quite a bit of use of that in tracking what's happening in my garden. Oh yeah, there's the ideas for how you can use your nature journal in your garden are kind of endless, aren't they?
Yes, yes, I love that. I love your enthusiasm for that, and you've given me some wonderful ideas already about that in the past. And one thing that I love that you do is that to make it simple, to make it accessible and easy on a busy day, you do this thing where you make lots of boxes of different shapes and sizes, and you'll just go out and just fill in one of those boxes on a day when you have 10 minutes or a small amount of time. And I love this. It's a very easy and accessible and simple way to be in the garden with your nature journal.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It takes the pressure off because
Yeah,
I'm just drawing this little tiny piece, and it in the end it also ends up looking really good anyway. Like if you your page looks
all
nice at the
together.
end, yeah, as a group,
Yeah.
even if each little square is actually kind of crummy. And I realized this isn't my idea. Well, nothing, there's so many people with so many good ideas out there. We're all borrowing from each other. But I was looking through my notes from International Nature Journaling Week 2021, and Melinda Nakagawa talked about Spark in Nature. You've also had her on your program. She talked about doing thumbnail sketches, and we did that as a
Mm,
practice in one of her workshops. And I think I planted that idea in my head and then I pulled it out later and I really love it. It's easy.
mm,
There's no
mm.
pressure at all. You just fill in the little square. And they're small. I use really small notebooks. And my little squares are like an inch by an inch. And
Yeah.
it takes no time to fill in.
Tell me about your love of dahlias. You seem to have a little love affair with them. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. Maybe an obsession. It's funny. I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but in Canada, it's becoming a full-blown it's like tulip mania from I don't know, the
Ah.
1700s, where you cannot order tubers anymore. Like the dealers tell you, okay, I'm posting my stock at noon on Saturday and you have to be
Oh.
there. I set my alarm. Like it's crazy. So it's not just me that's obsessed with them, but I, I have been thinking of what is it about them and obviously they're not a native plant to Canada. The ancestral type is native to the mountains of Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful plant. In Canada, where I live, we have to dig them up. They actually require a lot of care and fussing around. But what I love about them is that they're a plant you really interact with. So you are taking care of them all year, and there's always something to see and observe and learn. And they're easy and fun to propagate. And so right now I have some growing in a window and they're just a tuber. I don't know, they maybe kind of look like a ginger rhizome, but it's a different kind of structure. And little, they have eyes, and at this time of year, those will start to sprout, and you can cut those off and root those. And so
Mhm.
there's a lot you can do to interact with them. You can collect seeds. I'm going to talk for hours about dahlias.
Please do.
No, they're so something really interesting about them is they're octoploids. So humans have two sets of chromosomes, and dahlias have 8 sets of chromosomes. So if you collect seeds from a plant, like it's a complete surprise what is going to come out of that. It's really neat. So I could collect seeds from one flower and have dozens of different types of flowers come out of it. So that's fun. Yeah. Yeah,
Wow,
and
that
then
is fun.
yeah, it is, and then the last thing I'll just say about them, they're impossible to draw, but so many insects love to visit them, and I really have enjoyed nature journaling who visits them.
Wow, and they are the blossoms are just delightful as well.
Yeah, they're spectacular.
Oh, wow, that's so cool.
So I mentioned gardeners are a big group that I would really like to connect to nature journaling. And the other group that I think of is naturalists and other people interested in local conservation. So, local conservation groups. And I'm not sure how I would do this yet, but I would like I don't know how common this is in other countries, but where I live, we have naturalist clubs
Mm,
and we have land trusts, and they're local groups of very passionate people, many of whom are already skilled naturalists or who want to learn. And they do events, often for fundraising, often for conservation initiatives. And I feel like there's an opportunity for me to participate in their events or offer opportunities for people to try nature journaling and to use that as a way to help raise money. So, say a local land trust was organizing an event, and if we had a little nature journal workshop at it and everyone paid $10, then that helps raise money for that land trust. And so actually I have an event coming up. My friend works for a local conservation organization. It's kind of arm's length from government, and they run regular workshops at their properties. And we're doing a nature journaling workshop. I'm
perfect.
excited. I hope, yeah, I hope we get a good turnout. And so, because I'm not in the position of doing this for a living, I have my full-time job and I'm doing it. It's my passion.
Mm.
I, I any money that gets made out of that, then I can donate that where I want, which is I think it's a perfect way for me to share what I've learned, what I'm passionate about, inspire others, and do something positive. That's kind of my vision of where I'm going with this. Yeah.
That's a beautiful vision, and giving extra tools to naturalist groups as well is a wonderful thing. Um, Saying, yeah, you can record this using words, pictures, and numbers, and understand and go deeper with what you're seeing already is a really fun and useful thing. And the fundraising aspect is really important as well. Yeah, that's a really cool vision.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it plays out. I'm a little bit surprised that I don't already see this
Hmm.
happening where I am. I know there's a woman I think she's in Manitoba, who's working with a conservation organization there. I see her on Instagram, and she's doing this kind of thing. And I, um, I love that idea. And I'm sure people are doing it elsewhere, but I haven't seen much of it in my
Hmm.
province yet.
Hmm.
So maybe I'll start and other people
Yeah,
will do it too.
that's really cool. In your Instagram bio, you describe yourself as nature's witness. And I think these words are just so evocative, and I'd really like to hear your thoughts about being nature's witness and what that means to you.
Yeah, that phrase just came to me one day, and it just seemed to perfectly encapsulate my entire really my entire belief system in my
Mm,
life. I've since realized, of course, I'm not the first person to come up with that phrase, and I think an organization in the US has trademarked it, but that's okay. Um, what I mean by that is the word witness has a lot of different meanings. And you can think of the religious organization that uses that word, and in Christianity, to witness means to share what you've observed and experienced of your Christian God. And so, in that regard, being nature's witness is sharing my connection and experience and
mm,
love of nature. So that's one way it makes sense to me. And another way is I heard this really powerful interview with a woman in the US who was part of an organization that was when horrible things were happening at the US Mexico border with refugees crossing there and children being held. There was an organization that would go and they would just be there and see and
mm,
let the people know they were being seen, they were being witnessed, and that in itself helped them deal with a situation that everyone was feeling powerless to do anything about. But the people who were being imprisoned were feeling seen, and the people doing the witnessing felt this is the small thing I can do for you. And so, because I do work in conservation and I care about nature, I feel like by being present to nature and seeing it, that is the tiny gift I offer back to nature, if that makes sense.
that makes total sense, and that was really powerful what you said, and it's given me goosebumps because, yeah, to be seen, that's a gift that we give each other when we pay sustained compassionate attention, as John Mueller says, and to be seen as something just so valuable and something we all need in life, and to offer that to nature is incredibly special. And what you just said about witnessing horrors during times like that, uh, it leads beautifully into another question that I wanted to ask you about, because you've written about the nature journal being a place where you can process and explore ecological grief. And yeah, can you talk to that about ecological grief?
Yeah, it's I've used my nature journal for ecological grief, and I've used my other journal, my feelings journal, for the grief that we all feel for loved ones. And it's the same process. It's this thing is happening, and in some cases I see this thing happening to nature that I can't do anything about, and it's frustrating, it's painful, it really affects you emotionally, and instead of just having those feelings pent up inside you, you can write it, you can draw the thing. It is just another tool. It is no different from
Mm,
how
mm,
people might use a journal for grief for a loved one. I found it helpful because like it's sad to draw a thing that is being lost. And for me, the field I work in right now, my job is to be a specialist in invasive species, and
mm,
I love nature journaling trees, and there's so many invasive diseases and insects in my part of the country right now. So when I go in the forest, that's what I see, or I see these beautiful stands of trees that I know will be attacked. And so I can I can spend time enjoying those trees and like this is a little depressing, but for example, we have this beautiful tree here that I think most people love called Eastern hemlock. It's so pretty, especially in the winter. And I know that an invasive insect will arrive here. It's already taken over
Mm.
a lot of its range in the US. And so I was out skiing the other day in this beautiful stand of hemlock, and I'm like, oh, you are healthy and beautiful right now. I don't know how long you'll be like that. And I just spent time
Mm.
nature journaling, paying that sustained compassionate attention and capturing it in my nature journal. And who knows, like 20, 30 years from now, I might look back and be like, wow, we found a way to prevent that. I'll be like, wow, that's sad they're gone, and I'm glad I enjoyed them at the time. That's kind of, I heard I sometimes I get down, but I heard a really inspiring journalist. He writes about uh, endangered species and species going extinct. His name is John Platt, and I heard him interviewed on a grief podcast, and he
Mm.
talked about how being a journalist, writing about species that are going extinct, how that inspires him, and hearing other people do that is really helpful.
Yeah, that this is such an important topic. It's something we don't talk about a lot because, we have a tendency as humans to sort of want to always talk about the bright, happy things. But this is a reality, and this is something that people are going through, and something that needs to be witnessed and needs to be talked about and processed. And yeah, I think the nature journal is a perfect place to write down feelings. Maybe it's easy to forget if we're busy, writing down descriptions of plants and whatnot, that this can be a place for processing for ourselves.
I really think it can, and I've been really interested in that as a topic area. I I think there's people starting to think about it more, and you've had people on your podcast talking about it relative to climate change,
Mm,
and
mm,
I think there's a real field of study or practice there for art and journaling and ecological grief and the biodiversity crisis. And I bet there's people out there really exploring this topic. And I'm always kind of
mm,
poking around looking for them because it is very interesting to me.
mm.
Yeah, it's tough because when you're a professional ecologist, you can't bury your head in the sand. It's,
Yes.
you see what's happening, and there's an American famous conservation biologist, Aldo Leopold. He was active,
Yes.
you know him. Okay, yeah, he was active in the last century, and he has this great quote about how basically working in this field is this is what happens. You get really sad.
Yes.
But you also are
Yes.
open to the joy too.
Y Yeah, and I guess it's about balancing, and I think a nature journal is beautiful for that as well, because you can process these feelings, and also you can spend time, uh, in the joy, feeling the joy and connecting with a species. I'd love to talk to you about your bird of the year, because this is one, practice or activity that has sort of come out, and it was made popular by Rebecca Rolnick, who is an ecologist and nature journal teacher. And so she encourages people to nature journal, or sort of get connected with one bird. And it's the first bird you see on 1st of January at the start of the year. And you've taken on this practice, and I'd love to hear more about that, about connecting with and finding joy in your bird of the year.
Yeah, I was so happy I encountered this idea that she put out there. Yeah, so mine was the blue jay, which is a very common species in, I think, throughout a lot of Eastern and Central North America. And Yeah, I went outside on New Year's Day and they're loud, so I heard them right away. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing Bird of the Year. Thanks for reminding me." Um, yeah, and it's it's been really fun. We have a bird feeder outside our window, and so what's really neat is we have an individual blue jay that we know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she doesn't come every day, and her name is Gimpy because she has an injured wing, and that's how we know who she is. Her wing is a little weird. So she can fly. She's not great. So we see her when she's there, and we're really excited to see her. And so knowing that that's my bird of the year, I am paying more attention and, I'm enjoying trying to draw their feathers, which is tricky because they're blue. And I think probably your guests know that blue feathers aren't actually blue. It's a structural thing, not a pigment thing. So it makes it really,
Can you talk about that a little more?
oh, yes. I'm not an expert on this, but the color blue in feathers is caused by like the structure of the feather itself. So it's almost an
Okay.
illusion the way it refracts light versus the other colors we see in feathers are caused by pigments and the way our eye sees them. I'm not explaining this well at all.
Mm.
But yeah, it's not an actual blue. So when it looks different in different light all the time, and so it makes it really challenging but fun to try to nature journal. And,
Yeah.
and yeah, and having it as a bird of the year, you really get drawn into them. Blue jay, because they're so common, it's also easy to take them for granted because they're everywhere,
Yes.
and yeah. But now I'm much more curious about them. So they're noisy birds, and I hear them all the time. I hear them from my house, and every time I hear them, I'm like, "What are you guys up to?" And so I recently learned, I'm like, "Well, this is my bird of the year. I'm gonna look into this so I can write about it." At this time of year where I live, they're actually they're mating flocks, so it'll be a flock of about 8 to 10 birds with one female and several males chasing her around. And I have a book that describes the behavior, and now I'm watching them. I'm like, oh, that's exactly what's going
Yes.
on. Yeah, so it's fun. It's just, again, it's this little prompt that triggers you to pay more attention and to connect and to learn more.
Yeah, I think observing our common birds is a really wonderful practice because they are so common we can actually forget to learn more about them or connect with them. And Melinda Nakagawa has a course that she offers called Spark Your Bird Love, and in that course, they came up with this uh, cute name for these birds that we see all the time, which is our backyard bird besties.
Oh, I love that.
And I think knowing our backyard bird besties is just so good because we can forget to get to know them because you see them all the time. And my bird of the year is the magpie, and they are so interesting and intelligent and unique, and it's good to have a reminder. Yeah, our backyard bird besties are important, and we need to get to know them some more.
I really like that term. And I know you're interested in seasons, and I'm always amazed by the birds that you have where you live.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
just, it's incredible the things you have. So yeah, that's
And it's a good
fun.
reminder. Yeah, seeing it through someone else's eyes is such a good reminder to be amazed because, I have, cockatoos flying over, screeching over my head, and it's easy to think, "Oh, yeah." But then when you see it from someone else's eyes, you realize, "Oh, yeah, hang on, that's really cool."
Yeah, yeah, it's a spectacular thing. And I actually had an experience like that with Blue Jay. It was actually in the fall before it was my bird of the year. We were at a lookout tower near our home up on the top of a big hill. And so the blue jays were flying around below us, and seeing them from that perspective, I tried to capture in my nature journal, and I realized, well, I realized how incredibly beautiful they are. When
Mm.
I was looking at it through my binoculars and trying to get it into my nature journal, I realized this is like a stained glass, all these pieces
Oh,
of
wow.
blue fit together and the way they're refracting the light. And yeah, it just gave me a whole new appreciation. It was both having the different perspective by being up on the lookout tower, but also because I had my nature journal there. Yeah, it was really nice to see blue jays that way.
Yeah. Another way that you connect with the local, connect with the familiar is through a sit spot. And I'd love for you to talk about your practice of going regularly to a sit spot.
Yeah, I love that practice of nature journaling, and my sit spots that I have nearby actually evolved from my meditation practice. So they used to be my meditation spots,
Mm,
but now I have my nature journal with me. And yeah, I know a lot of nature journalers do this, and I'm really lucky that I have a few that I can go to, and that they're so interesting to me. One of them is just 500 meters from my house, so it's really nice to be able to go there, and it's in a little maybe 6 hectares of deciduous forest, second growth mature forest. And I would never get bored in there. I could go in there and nature journal every single day and not get bored. Like there's so much to see. And yeah, it's just it's a place I sit and I'm quiet, and some days there's all kinds of birds, some days there's no birds, some days the light on the tree trunks just, is spectacular, and I wish I had the watercolor skills to capture it. And I'm getting to know individual trees in that particular
yes.
sit spot. Yeah. And they're showing up in my nature journal, and there's one, it's it's dead. I haven't posted this picture, but it's just this knobbly dead little tree. And I don't know, something about him just catches my eye and reminds me, oh yeah,
Mm,
pull out your nature journal. Yeah, it's such a great practice. It's just letting yourself be open to what's there. And when I go, it's easy when you're nature journaling. You head out the door with your kits, to kind of have an expectation of, oh, today I'm going to do this thing or try to make this nice thing.
yes.
Yeah, and it's easy to get caught up in that. And if you get too caught up in that, it kind of takes away from the joy of it. And so I like to arrive at my sit spot with no preconceptions about what will happen. And some days I don't nature journal there. I just enjoy, and some days it is a little contrived. I'm like, no, I really want to draw that thing today. I'm drawing it. And some days I'm surprised by what I end up recording.
Yeah, that's really good advice to go out there and be open to being flexible, and maybe you're not going to journal the thing you're on a mission to journal, and just to be open to the surprise of what nature's telling you on that particular day.
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable part of the practice, and that's part of the mindfulness aspect of it, right? Is to show up without expectation or judgment.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, I really enjoy that.
Talk to me about how your nature journal and nature journaling has changed over time.
Yeah. So, it's gotten a lot messier.
So I had a little heads up about this one. I was gonna actually ask you this, but you mentioned it earlier that your nature journaling has gotten looser and messier as you went along, and I think this is amazing. Can you describe the difference between your journals when you started and your journals now?
Yeah, yeah. It's so I have a art toolkit, that company, and I actually credit that with me having such a consistent practice is because it's tiny and light and I can bring it everywhere. And so in it, it fits these small moleskin notebooks that are pretty small. And I've filled three of them now. And my first
Mhm.
one, I put a lot of effort into making, well, doing a good job on the pictures, like spending time making them look nice, and then also trying to format the pages nicely. So trying to finish them off and put nice borders and all of that. And because I was learning, I'm like, okay, I want to be consistent in how I record my metadata. So the date and time and weather and all that. And I was trying to come up with my own style. And so that first little notebook, when I look through it, it's really pretty. Like they're really nice. And I did some good quality nature journaling too. And so now I'm on book three of those, and it's a mess. There's just like scribbles and, ink drawings that are half filled in. And I think I need to replace my water paintbrush. And the paint's been freezing on me a lot because it's been so cold out,
Oh,
and
wow.
I don't care. I, d- I, it, am I filling pages? Yes, and that's what matters. And I know people talk a lot about pencil miles, and I see
Mhm.
it. I, I'm curious to see where it goes from here. And I think that's important because I mentioned that I've actually been doing what is essentially nature journaling for longer than I thought.
Yes.
And yeah, and when I look back at what I was doing, say in 2016, I remember at the time being disappointed because I tried to draw this grass and I wasn't happy. It wasn't beautiful. And so I put my sketchbook away for months.
Mm.
And now I look
Mm.
back at that, I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty nice. And
How,
so,
what do you attribute this loosening up? How are you doing that? Because I think that so many people want to be doing that and not sure how to do it.
yeah, I think is it laziness? I don't know. It might partly be forced for me by the weather and conditions I'm out in, because it's been cold out here where I am since November. So sometimes I'm wearing mittens or my pen's freezing. So that helps. And also too, I was starting to find I wasn't spending as much time as I wanted to recently doing it. And so it's like it doesn't matter, just,
Yeah.
2 minutes even, just do it. And again, a lot of the advice Marley Pfeiffer gives.
Yes. I was gonna say actually, because I know that he's a big influence on you and that he is very much into, just getting things down, turning the page, getting something else down, turning the page, and I think that yeah, maybe it's having mittens, maybe it's the temperature, but mostly I think that, it's the mindset that you're focusing on, um connecting with nature in whatever moments you have in whatever conditions and getting that down on paper without judgment uh, without trying to make something beautiful. And um, I think that's what it is. I don't know, but from the outside I think that that's it.
I think that is, and I noticed in January I had signed up for this year-long art journaling course. And it's a really nice online course. And so I was really excited about it. And I started in January, and they're teaching all different techniques. And we were doing like gesso and gel mediums, and they had these projects. And I was doing it, and I felt myself getting caught up in
Mm,
it being art. And it was just taking me down a path I didn't want to go down right now. I'm still excited about the course. I want to do it, but I noticed it was affecting my nature journaling, that I was
mm,
starting to worry about technique and outcomes, that's just not what I want for this practice right now. And one day I hope to have the time to do that. I would like to learn more methods and practice and get better with these tools and media so that I can capture more things more accurately, but I don't want that to be a barrier right now either.
Yeah, and I think you've said it perfectly. If the art is helping you learn something, communicate something, or connect with nature, then yeah, let that tool work for you in that way. But if it is a distraction and the goal is making a pretty picture, then that's not ideal. So I think you've captured it just perfectly.
Yeah, yeah, and it's been interesting for me. I was looking through my normal journal where I write my feelings in, and I use
Mhm.
ink markers in there. And sometimes if I don't have my nature journal with me, I'll end up doing some nature journaling in there with
Mhm.
these they're markers. And I wrote on one page, I'm like, oh, markers are terrible for nature journaling. And then I flip through, I'm like, oh, but you have all these great marker nature journal
Yeah.
pages in here. It doesn't matter. It, when you go back and look at what you've done, you realize, oh, this is great what I've captured.
Yes. Karina, it's been so nice to talk to you, and I love your way of combining mindfulness and nature, processing of all these feelings that we have, letting go of perfectionism and just being in it for the moment and the connection. And it's beautiful, and I love it. And I'm so happy to have talked to you about it all. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Beth, and your podcast has been a huge part of my practice, so it's been such a treat to talk to you about it. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode with Karina. I feel like the conversation roamed over so many different and important topics. I especially value Karina's perspective on ecological grief and the role that our journals can play in helping to process the feelings of helplessness about what's happening in our world. This is something that we don't talk a lot about, but something that we experience, and it's really important to have an outlet for that. I also really love her way of connecting mindfulness and nature journaling. I loved this whole conversation actually, but I think my favorite part was when Corina talked about how her journal is getting freer and messier as she goes along. We have such a tendency to think about how our pages look and whether we're getting it right and making nice pages that we can show people. But Corina manages to really make this about the process and not the product. And in this way, she's keeping the joy in the practice. And this is what it's truly about. All of us can be inspired by her practice and her mindset and let go a little more. Let go, let go. To learn more about Corina and to see some of her nature journal pages, please visit the show notes for this episode, where you'll find links to her website and Instagram page. Thank you so much for listening. See you next week.